I think one of the most underrated things that guys should master is tonality.
Yes.
One of the biggest things I tell guys all the time, especially on consults, and I'm able to detect it immediately from the way that they speak to me. I'm like, you speak in the passive voice, you need to stop doing that. You need to start speaking more in the active voice. You need to start almost, especially when you talk to women. Women respond very favorably to this. You need to tell them versus asking them.
Yes.
You need to speak from a more authority standpoint where it's like, all right, we're going to do this. Hey, let's do this, blah, blah, blah. Versus like trying to get her permission or what she thinks or whatever. And the reality is most girls, if you say it in a convincing manner, they're going to follow along, even if they might not necessarily agree with it all the way.
It's amazing when you just sound like you know what you're doing, how they just follow along.
Questions put it in her frame, that's why.
I recommend Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. Chapter 7 goes over these 10 tonalities that he uses. One of them is called absolute certainty. That is the one salespeople use and the one often you can use with women.
I mean, if you ask girls what they're doing right now, they say, I'm just going with the flow. So if you can lead the flow, you win.
Yeah.
That's very true.
They prefer to go with the flow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, but yeah, guys, I mean, the tonality, that's a big one. And, Mystery talked about this, like,
I talked to Mystery yesterday.
Oh, really?
I talked to Eric
trying
yesterday.
to get him out.
Okay.
Isn't he kind of quirky too?
He's quirky, but the thing is, Mystery is like he could memorize these stacks of routines, and he could do them flawlessly like an actor. It was so crazy to watch him do it, and it worked really well. Social media made it a little difficult to do what he was doing back there in the early aughts, but it was really crazy to watch. He definitely I've seen a lot of PUAs. Most of them are not nearly as good as they say they are. He definitely was
good.
Yeah, and for the audience, real quick, because that's a PUA term, stacking routines, etc. Guys, a stacking routine is nothing more than having an opener and a story. A lot of times, it's a demonstration of higher value story, a DHV story. He's able to tell these stories right in a way that displays higher value, right? So we know that women like confidence, ambition, protector of loved ones. Being funny,
leader
all these
of men,
different leader
protector
of men.
of ones, willingness to walk away, willingness to emote, and I forgot what the last one was. But there was just like he had these 5 attraction triggers.
Yeah.
Those were the first ones. But then we got into pre-selection.
But the story he tells always subtly demonstrates each of these traits that he's talking about.
That up because it's storytelling is a skill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's a very good.
He's able to tell. Yes, he's able to tell the story in a way to keep the women engaged.
Right.
There's a cliffhanger in it, etc. And like you said before, back in early 2000s, it was fantastic because this was an underground niche thing. There was no social media. If you didn't read the books, you didn't know what the they were talking about. So nowadays, and I think kind of they kind of hurt themselves doing this. The show, The Pickup Artist, even though it exploded right with popularity and helping guys find this stuff, myself included, it also hurt because now women became privy to this underground community.
Cosmo, who won the first season of The Pickup Artist, he just called me last night too. He's here teaching a boot camp.
Wow. It's funny. I had a friend in Barbados, right? Really good with a ladies player. But he would tell stories to girls, and I'm like, bro, I know you. That's a lie. But it worked because he's telling them a story to show
they're entertained. They're locked in.
But it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. That happened for real. I'm like, this lying his ass off, but it's working.
Yeah.
What the f going on?
Yeah. And the key is and it's a very delicate balance, guys. Going in there and be like, yes, I was in my Lamborghini, and then I went ahead to. That's not how you do it. It's got to be a very
subtle flex.
Subtle flex where you're kind of flexing a little bit, but it's like almost the story is too good for her to notice that.
Yeah,
it's like after the fact.
It's not a brag.
Yeah,
it's the actual story that's going somewhere to show that you're a man. Yeah, you're actually a leader.
So and so many guys f that up because they tell stories and they're so focused on like a detail that will DHV, and she'll pick up on that. That you're like trying to lead that way. So it's a skill set, man, to be able to tell a story and be able to DHV while doing the story and keeping the girl engaged. And the thing with Mystery that I'll give him credit for is he would do this with like 5-7 girls around him.
Yes.
And he would do that. He'd open up a set. He'd tell this story, etc. He'd be, once you get really advanced, you're able to do this. He'd net girls that he liked, and then while simultaneously building a rapport with annoying friends and / cock blocks. And, it was that's why Pickup is so great because it teaches you so many different things about human psychology, and it also just makes you a better communicator, better orator, better storyteller. It just makes you a more sharp individual socially regardless because if you're able to sit there and deal with 7 bimbos, right, and be able to keep them all entertained, etc.
Women.
Bimbos. Right? What ends up happening is you go to a boardroom meeting. Easy mode.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to get funding. I remember when I would do my my presentations for my cases, right? I won't go into the weeds and put people to sleep, but I would go a lot of the times because complex investigations are very expensive.
Yeah.
You need funding. So I would go ahead to the Department of Justice and present my case. Hey, I need to make this case an OCDF case, Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, because XYZ. And I'd go through each bullet point as to, the importance of each target, what they're doing, the type of crimes they're committing, what they're capable of. This is drug trafficking, the amount of drugs that they're moving per week, etc. And you have to do it in a convincing manner. You got to speak in an active voice. It's not like, I think he's doing this. It's like, it's estimated that XYZ is moving this many kilograms, and we know this through XYZ source, blah, 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 etc. I just debriefed them 2 days ago, so the information is recent. I need this funding, blah, blah, blah. And bam, from that skill set of, talking to girls and opening a set and not being nervous, I was easily able to go in there and talk to, 50 agents that are in there, right? Higher ups, by the way, because I'm trying to get funding from FBI, DEA, etc., because it's a whole government thing, OCDF. You guys can look it up, OCDF program. And you're getting this funding from DOJ. So you need to be able to speak in a convincing manner and know what the you're talking about. And then on top of that, you need to be able to answer their questions. Oh, well, explain to me, blah, 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 about the target. Oh, yeah, we know this, XYZ. So it made it easier. It's funny. Pickup made it easier for me to speak with, high-ranking officials in the U.S. government.
Yeah. People get a really bad impression of pickup nowadays. Like the era you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now people for some reason have this misconception that it was all about like, neg this, neg that, and it's because of the
rote memorization.
Yeah, because of these MTV shows, the reality shows, all that. They gloss over all the stuff you just talked about.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's taken a dude who's literally autistic.
Yeah.
Literally, I've seen it with my own eyes. Like he's super autistic. And now he's actually a regular, normal guy.
Yeah.
And the only way to get a guy to that point is to kind of baby step him through a normal social interaction and teach him all these little micro expressions and micro adjustments in his body language and reading body language. And
I would argue
repetition again and
most socially awkward people, they did what you did. You take your guys out in Vegas to talk to girls in person.
Immersion.
We'll solve a lot of their problems.
It's immersion because it's harder. Like the reason why we do what we do in my program is because it's more stimulants. It's really, if you can bench press 300 pounds, you can bench press 200 pounds. So when you do the meetup for all the real estate agents in your city, you just dealt with a bunch of girls. Like it's so much easier to deal with this. To your point about the pickup artists, one of the issues was when a lot of the guys had approach anxiety, and so what they did was they refused rejection instead of accepting rejection. And this is where guys got very weird and started freaking girls out, and that's where it got a lot of, like, if you'll see in Canada, they'll literally have signs inside of malls. They'll do this we'll basically say no pickup allowed here. If you we'll arrest you or we'll kick you off the property. What happened was
there's one mall in Toronto that's big shops.
Yeah, for sure. So what would happen is what happens is when you get a rejection from a girl or a girl gives you feedback, you can't reframe everything. Sometimes you did do something wrong and you need to learn from what you're doing. And a lot of pickup guys didn't do that. They just basically said everything she said is wrong. And you would see guys laying out in the middle of the street or going 60 days without taking a shower or just really weird stuff like that. And they did so because they wanted to prove that they would just not accept rejection. Rejection, though, is there for a reason to some extent.
It's feedback.
Yeah. Not having an emotional reaction to rejection is fine, but you need to take it as feedback. And that split that happened, and a lot of guys who have autism, they weren't able to see that difference. That's where the problem started becoming. So you'd have 15% of guys who would have outrageous success from it, but a good number of guys just didn't know how to do that. They wouldn't take action, or they did not have the ability to see the nuance in what they were doing. And so every rejection was like reframe, pimp game, reframe. She just told me she doesn't like me because she wants my dick. Like everything was a reframe. And it's like, no, except your breath actually does stink. Like you need to take the feedback, and because they didn't do it, that was one of the problems. That's why there was a point where I was still hanging out with Mystery and Neil Strauss and those guys, but then I started to hang out with these club promoters who would just like run through 70, 80 girls, and I was like, okay, what's different here? And then I started noticing that they would take the feedback, and it was just like the main thing I noticed is they could be around a lot of women without acting feminine. They were still the leader, and that was like the main thing that I saw that they did that was really, really great.
Being a club promoter is like easy mode, because it automatically does. It's like proof, because what it does is it puts a lot of the things. It puts you in the driver's seat, and a lot of things that you need to already have makes you a leader of men. It shows that you're decisive to a degree. You're bringing in them the fun, so they automatically connotate like you with fun, which boom, that's a good thing right there. Safety, because you're able to protect them from weirdos, etc. Especially when you display these things actively in the club. Other women see you and like you, because if you're a good promoter, you're typically going to have 5 to 10 girls that are like always around you, etc. So it does a lot of the work for you just from being in that profession.
And there's one other thing: when you start approaching women, now you don't associate whatever she says with rejection, because you're giving her an offer.
Right.
Does that make sense? The offer is, do you want to come to have fun with us? Or you don't want to come? It's not a personal rejection. And so you'll see guys who are club promoters, they'll do thousands of approaches, and the approach anxiety is completely gone after a while.
Rejection is better than better than regret.
Best book I've ever read on this is called Very Important People by Professor Ashley Mears from Boston University. She has her interpretation is incorrect, I think, but her description is the best I've ever seen. She even talks about Jason Strauss, the owner of Tal Hakkasan Group. She talks about him. There's 3 case studies, Harvard case studies on Jason Strauss. It's really incredible stuff when you see like how much money these guys were able to make just understanding the concept of being able to get girls to come to different events.
Like when I was writing the 5th book, The Player's Handbook, a lot of people people kept asking me like, Rollo, what's the best book to learn game? I'm like, you don't learn game from a book, man.
Yeah, man.
And so you have to be out there and immerse yourself. So if you want to learn how to speak Spanish, go like live in a Spanish country, and you will learn to speak Spanish at some point, out of necessity, right? Because you're in this immersion situation right there. But the thing is, I think back in the mid 2000s when this stuff was coming out, I think a lot of people still look at like PUA as like, Mystery with his black fingernail polish and feather boa and everything. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But you're talking about an archetype or like a guy like Mystery that's like almost 20 years ago. And so we're still clinging to that as sort of like this something that's ridiculous because we want to poke fun at it. But what you can't poke fun at right now is the fact that there is this new generation of guys who they'll laugh at that, but they lack the social skills, and that's really where game is at right now. And so I made sure that I introduced that in the introduction of the Player's Handbook, because game it's social skills. It's a social skills set is what it is. So it's not even just about so much like talking, I mean, obviously guys want to talk to women and be good conversationalists, but as you were saying before, it teaches you other skills so you can get a job. So you can like talk to, a police officer, so you can talk to your family, whatever it is, just so that you have those social skills. And I think that one of the things that's happened really for the, the Generation Z, the Zoomers, right? Is that because they've been acculturated and brought up behind a screen, they don't have that immersion anymore, so that they're learning those social skills that you would necessarily pick up from previous generations. So when he's talking about like how people think that it's ridiculous to talk about like neg hits or like amuse mastery or some of these old school principles, that was one of the motivations, the incentives for me to write the 5th book, because I wanted to let people know that there's a lot of psychology that's behind all of this that seems like, oh, it's ridiculous. Well, that would never work on me. No, it would work on you, and here's why it would work on you, because there's psychological principles that are behind that. You just don't have those skills. So like when you were talking about how you guys have been on these shows and you're better speakers, you're better able to interact publicly. I'm a better speaker, a better public speaker today than I was when I was working with Pat Campbell back in 2018. And he was my mentor, right? So I learned a lot along the way. Yeah, rest in peace. I learned a lot from him. And so like I knew all the red pill stuff. I had it all down, how to deliver it and how to be a good conversation, how to tell stories about it. Because storytelling is a human need. Like we need to hear stories from people. That's how we understand like our surroundings. We pass on them for how we've done it, throughout history.
It's how people were entertained before TV and books
it's also how we taught the next generation what we knew from the previous generation as well. So we would have these, folk tales and everything else, or it could be just cave drawings, like here's how we killed the woolly mammoth.
Even in the Bible, there are parables to display certain things you want to learn.
Storytelling is like part of human nature. And if you are unable to do that, or if you're unable to be entertaining, but if you're unable to at least be a good conversationalist, because that's really all social skills you rely on, is really being able to tell stories really well and to tell them accurately, quickly, concisely. There's a great book. It's called Storyworthy. And I think it's Matthew Dix is the guy who, I got it through Russell Brunson, I think is who suggested this. I didn't know this, but there's actually storytelling competitions. Like it's almost like, cowboy poetry, but it's like storytelling jams. And you have between 8 and 12 minutes to tell a story. and then the audience judges you, and then they have like a panel of like 6 judges who will say who's the best storyteller. Wow. And it's you, and there's a process to it. There's like, it's layered on, like here's what usually works. It's got to be funny, but if it's funny, it's got to be sad, and if it's sad, then it's got to be funny kind of thing. So there's this ups and downs that go along with it. There's almost a science to telling a good story.
Yeah.
And doesn't necessarily have to be about you personally. It could be about giving a sales dissertation or something like that, but you just have to be able to deliver information in an entertaining way that sticks with people, and it's usually through storytelling.
Yeah. And not only that, but like people, and I find it so amazing how like, women will sit there and be like, oh, you have to read a book on this, or you had to take a class on this.
You have to educate yourself.
And it's interesting because,
you don't just get it.
I say a million times, right? Privilege is invisible to those that have it. And the thing is that women don't understand that they have a social gift where they're able to assess value immediately off of the way someone speaks, conveys themselves, etc. Men have to earn that skill set.
Yes.
Women are born with it. But what I will say is this. Just because women are more socially calibrated than men doesn't necessarily mean that they're good conversationalists.
Yeah.
I want to make that very clear.
Absolutely not.
There's a lot of bimbos out there that are absolutely stupid and cannot necessarily hold a conversation. But what I will say is this. They're very good at assessing your conversational skills. I'm going to make that very clear to everybody. I'm not saying, right, that girls are good conversationalists. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them are dumb, and they don't have the prerequisite knowledge, etc., to actually be able to hold a good conversation. However, they're very good at assessing your conversational skills and how you can hold their attention, etc. And be honest with y'all, if you're good at, you'll start to notice this because women are very like-minded. Once you're able to be attractive and tell good stories to one girl, more than likely other girls are going to find you interesting too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the number one complaint I hear from when I'm dating a younger woman, like at 18, 19, 20, 22. The first thing, if I ask them, what's it like dating guys in Miami? What's it like dating guys in Marbella? What's it like dating guys in London? What's it like dating guys your age? The number one complaint is they can't hold a conversation.
Yeah.
The number one complaint.
But isn't it funny though? They're good at picking people.
Bad hygiene. Those
skills,
two right there are the top, like,
Bad
two.
hygiene.
for social,
Bad hygiene and that.
They're very socially aware, right? But they can't choose the right guy to marry.
Yeah, because they're screening for because they're screening for emotional engagement.
They can read your conversational skills, but not your character skills, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
So
Well, I go to some self-help conferences. I'm friends with a lot of these guys, Dan Flashman or Ty Lopez and a lot of those dudes. And whenever we hang out, one of the things I notice is it's 99% men in there. And whenever sometimes there'll be a bunch of girls at my apartment, right? They'll getting ready, we're all going out or whatever. And I'll listen to them talk, and it's very clear to me that they don't believe male self-help improvement. They're not offended by it. They don't think it's real.
Yeah.
They literally just care about the finished product. Like Rich Cooper says, they wait at the finish line and they fuck the winners. That's it. So like it's almost like, an NFL team, they're paying you for what you're going to do in the future. They don't care about all the practice you put in to get where you are.
Yeah, the first part of that is they don't care about your struggles.
Yeah.
They wait at the finish line. And,
they don't care about your struggles. They wait at the finish line. They the winners. And so that's what happens, man. It's like one of these things where you understand all the stuff you had to go through. Now, like he said before, when they find out, when they see all these self-improvement books, they're like, why did you have to do this? Don't you just get it? And the problem is now, back in our ancestral past, all the way just say back in the 1950s, we had a process in this country or in this, just in world in general, where you had to write a passage as a man, and then that way you would get it. And that would be like going through Marine Corps boot camp, or it would be like some initiation when you're on the football team and they tape you to the goalpost, or you carry the seniors.
Hazing is good.
Yeah. This guy, not the pseudo homosexual, but the basic hazing, like making somebody carry water or whatever, that's normal. Do push-ups, rookie. That's what they did to us when we joined the military. And I understood that. There was a rite of passage. As fewer and fewer men go through that, fewer and fewer men will get it. And then so more of these men are going to require some level of self-help in order for them to get it. No, women do not give a that you don't get it, and they're not going to help you get it.
Facts.
They're not going to teach you. It doesn't make any sense from an evolutionary standpoint, from a woman who's a perfect 10 to give you advice on how to fuck a 10, because then everyone would her. That doesn't make sense.
Yep.
That is not how it works. You don't ask the deer how to catch a deer. That's the problem. So because they don't understand that, when women give advice on what men should do, it's the advice they would give to a man they're already attracted to, because they cannot conceive of them sleeping with a man they're not attracted to. But if you go through years of self-improvement looking at guys who studied social circle or intersexual dynamics, you see men who weren't able to have sex with women, and then they were able to have sex with women. For us as men, we can conceive of that because we can conceive of male self-improvement. Women do not conceive of male especially
because
the very
men
attractive
must
one.
become and women just are.
Because they do not conceive of male self-improvement. What happens happens is they just think it just happened, and they think you were always like that. My girlfriend told me the other day, she's obviously 24 years younger than me, and she's like, yeah, when you were, she was looking at pictures of me when I was her age, and she was like, oh, you were hot, I would have gone out with you. And I'm like, no, the fuck you would. There's no way you would have gone out with me. That is so ridiculous. But in her mind, she thinks she would have gotten the same pang from meeting the 46-year-old me as she would have gotten from the 21-year-old me. And of course, that's not true. But she doesn't know that because in her mind, she doesn't see all the steps to get where I'm at.
Because they see the finished product. That's why they want a turnkey relationship. They want to walk into something that is like, exactly like what they were always hoping and dreaming for. It's like, they're waiting at the finish line.
Hold on, because they're a turnkey product. Because they went through puberty and then boobs popped up, sometimes when they were 16 or 17, and then all the guys gave them attention. They were just the finished product. They just add water, and they were hot, and female self-improvement was puberty and then turning 17, 18.
It also boils down to like what I've called the hypergamous filter. Women are looking for a guy who's legit. Like if you look at shows like The Bachelor or Cheaters or something like that, there's always the intrigue is finding out, is this guy really who he really says he is? Yeah. And that's this I wrote about it in the first book, Indignation. It's like that women love that sense of indignation, especially when they're trying to figure out if a guy is the real deal, if he's authentic, if he really is who he says he is. That is why The Bachelor is in its 28th season right now, because it's a formula that has been around since we were running around in the sub-Saharan African savannas, back in the day. Is this guy really who he says he is? And if they can't get that in their regular lives, they will find it in their escapisms. But the thing is, the reason why they do that is because, well, first of all, it's a survival mechanism. They want to find that. But it also goes back to looking for the guy who's already the made man. Is he really who he says he is? And if you had to learn it, then that disqualifies you from their consideration immediately, because you're not actually the real deal, the real alpha. If you had to go from being like a nothing to being something, they don't want to know that you were a nothing at some time, because they wouldn't have had anything to do with you when you were in your high school years, but they will have something to do with you now that you're in your 30s or your 40s. We were talking on the I think it was on Adam Sosnick's show. Remember when I was telling you about how how old are you now? You're
36.
36, and you are
46.
46, and I will soon be 56 in April. Okay, there's 10 years difference between all of us. They're asking us about, like, if you're dating a younger woman, like, what would you talk about? What would you possibly have anything to say to her? You're going to have an intellectual conversation with that girl. They have everything to talk about because they have all 20, 30 years of lived experience and stories and everything
Life
else.
Lessons, everything.
That's why those guys who are women's peer group age, like say they're in their 20s, they're not good conversationalists because they have no lived experience. They have no stories to tell that keep them engaged along with that. So when we're looking at like the differences between ages, these guys are already made. So they have a frame and a world into which that woman wants to enter into in the first place. And so the question, is this guy really legit? Is he who he says he is? That's answered hands down. They already know with
also,
certainty.
speaking isn't always it as well. It's also the environment. And you being a made man, which means you can have access, which you didn't have before. True. So having that environment, having that lifestyle, but it still speaks for itself.
Congratulations. Now you know I would get named it Access Vegas.
Michael, I want to ask you this, because you probably have this very similar experience. You know as well as I do that not every woman is going to be into a successful man. No matter how available it is, there's some guy.
Not a particular one. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like women are very can be quite picky, right?
Yes. Or they have multiple attraction triggers.
Yes.
Hundreds of them.
You said this the other night. Yes. So even though he's a very attractive guy with lots of options, not every girl's going to like him, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you been with a girl and she's into you, and she immediately assumes that every girl on the planet therefore must be into you?
It is crazy. We did this experiment where we asked girls, and we're like, how many of your female friends, how do you think they are? And because women do this, when they're attracted to you, they think every woman is down to you immediately. Yep. They think when a woman is attracted to you, they start believing you come home and there's 9 women just waiting to have sex with you. And it's one of the weirdest things. Like, I wish it was that easy. Like,
that's one of my favorite tests that we do on Access Vegas. How do you think your friends on a range of 1 to 10?
And their friends are always 9s, but the girls are always 4s. And I'm like, no, your friends are exactly as you are, and they would be saying the exact same about you if you were here right now.
So it's so reliable too.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and that just goes to that just goes to show what we've discussed so many times about women, is that they're extremely solipsistic. The way I think is the way that the rest of the world operates as well.
Yeah.